Come on in, pull up a chair and take a load off because today I'm going to be reviewing and paging through Delta Green PX Poker Night from Arc Dream Publishing. So, should you deal yourself in for some modern era Lovecraftian horror, or should you hang on to your chips and simply take a pass at bringing this to your gaming table? Well, you're going to find out right after this. Howdy, 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 gang. Yes, I'm Jeff McAleer, back once again as your host here at the Gaming Gang channel. As I mentioned in the open, I am going to be reviewing Delta Green PX Poker Nights in just a moment. But first, I do want to mention if you like this video, by all means, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't. And if you do subscribe, ring that notification bell. It'll let you know when I upload videos such as this, as well as inform you when my live stream, The Daily Dope, airs right here on YouTube, Monday through Thursday nights, as I bring you the latest in tabletop gaming news. And of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in gaming news, reviews, and a whole lot more. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. Without further ado, I am reviewing Delta Green PX Poker Night. This is from Arc Dream Publishing. It's written by Adam Scott Glancy and Dennis Detweiler, with artwork provided by Dennis Detweiler. The 32-page adventure is available as a soft cover, including the PDF, for $14.99 over at DriveThruRPG. And if you just want the PDF alone, it is $4.99. Do you also want to mention that the Gaming Gang is an affiliate of DriveThruRPG. So if you are going to visit, please stop by thegaminggang.com first. Click on one of our banner ads, and that way, if you do happen to make a purchase, we get a little portion of that sale. And all those little portions really do add up and help keep the Gaming Gang around. Also, the fine folks over at Arc Dream Publishing did provide me with this review copy. So, full disclosure. So let's swing on over to the other camera, because here we've got Delta Green PX Poker Night. This is a revised edition of the adventure. I am not familiar with the first edition of this, so I can't tell you what's really changed. But I do know that, at least according to DriveThruRPG, the previous edition is 44 pages, where this clocks in at 32. So I don't know what's really changed, but we're going to focus on this new edition here. So we'll flip this over, take a peek at the back. I'm not going to read everything from the back, but the sky's the limit. A dozen Air Force misfits and malcontents have gone from misconduct charges or stretches in the stockade to a post even they can't screw up. Platt Air Force Base, a place where aircraft and careers go to die. The middle of nowhere, Nebraska. Saturday is the one night a week that everyone can look forward to. It's a chance to unwind. It started in the Post Exchange decades ago, back when Platt still belonged to the Army. The tradition stands today. Saturday is PX Poker Night. It's Saturday, August 22nd, 1998. An unmarked van rolls in and parks at the far end of the field. Guards in bizarre metal helmets get out and keep watch. Nobody knows why they're here. The base commander says they're under orders. Everyone is to leave them alone. Poker night is about to take a turn for the bizarre and deadly. All right, so let's jump on in. And I am going to mention there are spoilers ahead. I am going to talk about this adventure itself. Let's try to center this up a little better. There we go. I'm going to grab a quick sip of my beverage here. I'm going to be discussing this adventure, what's going on. So there are spoilers ahead. I'm not going to talk about every single thing that happens in the scenario, but there are spoilers if you are a player, if you are not the handler and you're hoping that your handler, your GM, is going to run this, I would recommend that go check out a different video here on the Gaming Gang channel. So you have been warned. All right, so we're going to jump on in here. So we get a bit of an introduction telling us a little bit about Platt Air Force Base. It used to be an Army base. That's why the name of the adventure is PX Poker Night. But the Air Force doesn't really call their post exchange a PX. It's actually a BX. So there is mention of that in here. So I don't want anybody saying, hey, how come the characters are Air Force, but they're calling it a PX? It is explained that the reason why they still call it PX Poker Night is because the tradition began back when it was an Army base. We get a list of the different personnel. So the premise of this Army base is it's in the middle of nowhere. It's near the Platte River in Nebraska. And this is really a place where Air Force careers go to die, as well as there's a boneyard for decommissioned aircraft before they're actually shuttled off someplace else. So it's not a huge boneyard, but many of the aircraft that are actually landing here at the base are just going to be scrapped. So we get a layout of the Air Force Base itself. Pretty cool aerial imaging here. We get a breakdown of what each of these areas are. And then we have the different key of what each area happens to be. So what's going on here? I'll kind of give you the premise of this adventure. Is each of the player characters, and there are 6 pre-generated characters included in this softcover adventure. So the characters are screw-ups. They're one step away from dishonorable discharge, or even worse, maybe a military prison. So they've been sent to this middle of nowhere Air Force base that has hardly any personnel whatsoever, and it's really, really dead. Very little actually goes on at this Air Force base. And supposedly, for years and years, the people in Nebraska, and especially around this Air Force base, have seen these ghostly lights in the sky. So you're already going to kind of discuss it with the players themselves, that they have seen these mysterious lights in the sky, and the area is known for that. And people say they're UFOs and things like that. So you're going to kind of lay the groundwork that kind of unusual things are seen in the skies near the base. That actually does not take place during the adventure. That is just kind of some background for the adventure. I would maybe even consider, because this adventure is designed as an introductory adventure, this is kind of an adventure that's set up for these characters to be recruited into Delta Green. I would almost be tempted to try to role play a little bit of what's going on at the base, or at least kind of cover it, talk about it a little bit, just so the players kind of have a bit more of a background. So, of course, like I said, we do have pre-generated characters in the back. We'll take a look at those in a moment, but you're obviously welcome to roll up Air Force characters rather than use the pre-generated characters. But you're going to also want to make sure that each of these characters, if you're rolling up characters, has some relatively serious flaw as far as the Air Force is concerned. So we get an area broken down into weapons at the base. There is a weapons locker at the base, which is said in the adventure that the player characters really should never have access to. But then it kind of talks about how they can break into the weapons locker. So I thought that was kind of odd. We're saying, well, the players shouldn't have access to this, but this is how you can break in. So it's like, okay. But with all the different weapons that are actually in the weapons locker, I would probably look for some way to prevent the player characters from actually having access to them and stick them to what's floating around as far as using pool cues and kitchen knives and carving knives and stuff like that as weapons. So we get more background about the area, the different locations. Then we also have some information about some of the other staff and the other officers, NCOs who are there as well. So, what's going on in this adventure is that the government has a secret organization called Monarch. Yes, I know this is not the new Godzilla movies, but this government agency is called Monarch. And of course, it's kind of like a black agency. Nobody really knows about it. Kind of like Delta Green, right? And they've actually been working with the Greys. They've been working with aliens as far as exchanging technology, and they don't trust these Greys. So, what they're looking to do is they've actually found this alien. I don't want to say it's an artifact, it's kind of an alien tool that they've been testing out, and they can use it to create an EMP, an electromagnetic pulse. And because Monarch already knows that there are UFOs that are in the area around this base, they decide what they're going to do is they're going to knock one of the UFOs out of the sky and try to gather up whatever they can from the UFO and not make it out that they intentionally did this. They're trying to make this look like it's an accident. So, like I said, they don't really trust the Greys, so they're looking to kind of one up them. It's a little brinksmanship going on here. So they have a van that contains this device called the Sonnet, which is going to be used to knock out the UFO. And they've got guards, they've got scientists, and they're all wearing these metallic helmets because this machine gives off these emanations which will slowly make you lose your mind depending on how close you get to this van, as well as how strong they're actually emitting a signal. So we get a bit of a background about what's going on with that. And when this van shows up on Saturday, when everybody at the base is looking forward to taking some time off. Now, there are some uh, members there who do have to still work. They don't get to take part in the poker night. You still have guard duty. You still have somebody who's monitoring the tower because even though this is a boneyard, it does have an active air control tower located there. So we get into a little bit of background about that. We get a breakdown of what's going on as the day progresses because the van shows up, like around noon, and then it's going through. Well, okay, this might happen. Players might be looking to do this, might be looking to do that. We get a discussion of the effects of the sanity loss on the Air Force officers and enlisted men and women. As I mentioned, there's like a dozen of them. And of course, six of them, or as many as six of them, are going to be your player characters as well. So, one of the cool aspects I liked about this is that it'll tell you, depending on if you're using the pre generated characters or not, that what happens when the player characters and NPCs lose sanity. What happens if they go temporarily insane? What happens if they suffer from permanent insanity? So it's pretty interesting. It is going to be a wild card as far as what's going to happen. So essentially, what takes place is the sonnet works. It's able to actually crash an alien craft but everybody who was wearing those protective helmets are actually killed by a discharge from the alien craft. So now the player characters, who are probably pretty shaken sanity wise already, and the NPCs, there may have already been like a mutiny taking place, or player characters or NPCs going mad as this van is sitting there. And the guards of the van, they don't care if everybody at the base is blowing each other up. As long as nobody comes near that van, they don't care. So we get a discussion about the craft, the crash itself, and the thing in the craft, because it turns out that the Greys are simply constructs that the Migo are using in order to communicate with Earthlings. Because the Migo are so bizarre and strange looking, they feel that they had to create something that's more humanoid to be able to communicate and not terrify the government leaders and the military organizations, the secret shadowy military organizations. So the player characters are going to meet these two Greys who come out of the ship, and they basically are telling the player characters that they have a pet that's trapped in the ship, and they're asking the player characters to help them out because they're too small and too weak to be able to free their pet, which happens to be Amigo. And the whole premise is that if the player characters go help them out and free the Migo is going to just escape, and the two Greys just collapse on the ground. And because once again, they're not really alive, they're constructs that the Migo use. So kind of interesting. One of the aspects of the adventure I thought is pretty weak is once the Migo gets freed. So it basically just takes off. It goes into the aircraft graveyard, and a few turns later, it's gone. I would have liked to have seen something else going on. If I were running the adventure, I would probably have the Migo looking to try to recover that technology from the van before they leave. So as opposed to just just getting out of there, just taking off, because I would like to see a little more confrontation, a little more going on with the Migo, as opposed to, oh, he's free and he's gone. As far as the alien craft that the Migo use, the explanation for that is simply because we already know in the Cthulhu mythos, the Migo can travel through space. They don't need uh, anything. They don't need to wear a suit or, a special suit or use a spaceship or anything like that. They can travel through space. So essentially, it's explained that these craft are used by the Migo to just get them much quicker through space, to get them to their destinations much faster. The other aspect of the adventure is there is a black op team that is, of course, waiting to sweep in once that alien craft crashes, to gather up whatever, bodies of aliens, whatever they can get their hands on, technology, things like that. So if the player characters have not turned off the alien device, the helicopter will crash. So, and of course, if the player characters don't turn off the device, it's going to drive them insane as well. So that's one of the main things that the player characters need to do, is they need to find out a way to just get into that van and turn the machine off. Now, once they get into the van, there's just a switch that can turn everything off. The adventure ends with essentially a debriefing of the player characters, and Delta Green tries to recruit them. So as far as an adventure for established Delta Green agents, this doesn't really serve any purpose. This adventure is specifically tailored as an introductory adventure to, well, maybe not even necessarily an introductory adventure, but it is an adventure that is designed for a new group of characters to either be brought in as new Delta Green operatives or friendlies. They don't necessarily have to be agents of Delta Green. They could become just friendly with the organization. So we finish up. We get a bunch of information about the personnel on the base, the officers, the NCOs, and the enlisted. Talking about the other characters, the Greys, the Migo. These handouts, I thought this was kind of interesting because remember I had mentioned that each of the NPCs and player characters, there's a breakdown of what their sanity loss is going to cause. So these are little handouts that you could actually give to the players if they're using those pre-gens. And then we have the 6 pre-generated characters to wrap up the adventure. And there we have Delta Green PX Poker Night. So let me swing on over to the other camera and I will share my final thoughts and give this a review score. All right, let me grab a quick sip here. So what did I think of Delta Green PX Poker Night? I like the adventure. I like the premise of the adventure. I want to say I like the premise of the adventure a little more than the actual execution of the adventure. So leading up to the actual crash, when the Sonnet device causes the alien craft to crash, it's kind of interesting. It's kind of a slow burn, and you're going to be trying to utilize the increase in the emissions from this device as the players start slowly losing sanity. And as the adventure progresses, as time progresses that evening, they're going to start losing more sanity. In fact, at one point, if they don't turn off the Sonnet device, they're going to be losing up to 6 sanity every minute. So pretty crazy. So that's got to be kind of like the first thing that the player characters need to take care of is to turn off that device. Leading up to that, I would say that this is probably an adventure if you're looking to introduce, say, Delta Green to your friends or just bring in some new characters, some new player characters into your Delta Green game. I think this works pretty well if you've got a normal group of players who role play, who can step outside of not the usual, well, this is what I would personally really do in this situation, but can actually role play and play a character. I think if you have a group of players who don't play like that, I don't think this adventure packs as much of a punch as it would with a group of players who do involve themselves in a little bit of real role playing as they play the game. Also, if you have a group of players who are kind of cut ups and kind of joke around at the table and things like that, I could see this working for them as well. Because remember, the player characters are supposed to be one step away from either getting booted from the Air Force or being incarcerated by the Air Force. So I think that is pretty cool also. So I like the slow burn aspect of it. Once the craft crashes and we got the 2 Greys emerge, it just seems like the adventure is going to be over really quick because basically the Greys are going to ask the player characters, "Oh, please help us to save our pet." Player characters, I mean, yeah, it's possible they could be like, "No way, kill these things." I'm sure it happens. And then they free the Migo, and the Migo is gone. And then if the Black Hawk with the secret team coming in hasn't crashed, basically they're just going to debrief the player characters, and at some point, Delta Green is going to look to recruit them. I think the ending of the adventure is kind of a letdown. a little bit, not terribly. It's a little anticlimactic. Like I said, if I were running this, I would have some confrontation between the Migo and the player characters. That they're trying to stop the Migo from getting that piece of technology. The Migo is trying to get that piece of technology, but he's also injured. So, and he doesn't have any of his, weird technology weapons that the Migo are famous for. So I think that would be pretty cool to play that out. As far as the length of time to play this, I could see if you're playing it as written, you're probably looking at a couple of sessions. If you're playing, say, 3 hours a session, I I wouldn't want to do it in one session because then I think you're really missing out on some of the cool little role playing hooks that are in the adventure itself. Like I said, I like the premise. I like much of the adventure. It's just I think the ending is a little anticlimactic, and you might need to have a certain group of players to really pull this off. So on a scale of 1 to 10, I give Delta Green PX Poker Night a solid 7.5 out of 10. I think I think it belongs in your collection, especially even if you just mine it for some cool adventure nuggets. Of course, you can always snag it in PDF as well for $4.99. Add it to your collection that way. All right, that is it for this time out. Once again, let me remind you, if you like this video, please give it a quick thumbs up. Subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel if you haven't already. And if you do subscribe, ring that notification bell because it will not only let you know when I upload videos such as this review, it'll also let you know when my live stream, The Daily Dope, airs right here on YouTube Monday through Thursday nights as I bring you the latest in tabletop gaming news. Of course, when you're not watching videos on the Gaming Gang channel, be sure to visit thegaminggang.com for all the latest in gaming news, reviews, comics, movies, TV. You know the drill. Get your geek on at thegaminggang.com. And of course, I will see you next time. And as I've been closing out my videos, unfortunately, during this time of pandemic, let me once again remind you, please do your very best to be smart and stay safe. Oh, you're still here. Well, if that's the case, let me point out that the things I'm going to be pointing at, if you are just watching the Daily Dope stream, you may not see what I'm pointing at. Usually, it will take about 12 hours once the stream is finished for YouTube to allow me to add my end screen. But if you're watching one of my other videos, such as my reviews or interviews, first looks, pastures, what have you, well, then by all means, click right here and you can subscribe to the Gaming Gang channel. If you click right up here, you'll find the latest episode of my live stream, The Daily Dope. And if you click over here, that's going to show you something that YouTube thinks you might like. Regardless, once again, I'm Jeff McAleer, and thank you very much for watching.